Today we're diving into one of the most incredible careers in all of history. Seriously. It's a story that takes us from a total backwater island to the absolute mastery of a continent. We are talking about the meteoric rise of Napoleon Bonaparte.
And you know, this quote really just nails it. History is full of these legendary conquerors, right? But almost all of them had some kind of head start. Napoleon's story is so wild because by all rights, it never should have happened. He was the ultimate underdog.
I mean, just look at this contrast. This is what makes his story so mind-blowing. Alexander, he was royalty from birth. Caesar, his family claimed to be descended from a goddess. And then you have Napoleon, from a family of minor nobles on Corsica, an island that had basically just become French. His starting line wasn't even in the same stadium as these other guys.
So how on earth does an outsider, a kid who at first actually kind of hated France, even begin to climb the ladder in such a rigid old-school society? Well, to understand that, we've got to look at his early years.
His whole youth was about being on the outside looking in. He gets sent to military school in mainland France and gets relentlessly bullied for his thick accent and not having a lot of money. But he pours himself into his studies and graduates as an artillery officer when he's just 16 years old. But here's the thing. In the old French system, all the ambition in the world wouldn't matter. And then 1789 happens, and history gives him the opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah, this pretty much sums it up. Before the revolution, French society was all about who you were, not what you could do. Promotions were based on your family name, not your talent. A system like that would have kept Napoleon stuck as a junior officer his whole life, no matter how brilliant he was.
The French Revolution was the key that unlocked everything for Napoleon. It just completely smashed the old aristocracy and created this massive power vacuum. All of a sudden, with thousands of noble officers either fleeing the country or, meeting the guillotine, the French army desperately needed skilled commanders. And they didn't care about your accent or who your dad was. For Napoleon, this was it. This was his shot.
So, with the door of opportunity now open, Napoleon didn't just walk through it, he basically blew it off its hinges. Let's see how he starts to build his legend with his first major commands.
So in 1796, he gets handed command of the French army in Italy. And this army was a total disaster. They were underfed, hadn't been paid, and were pretty much ready to just quit. But Napoleon's leadership, it was electric. He gets in front of these guys, inspires them, promises them riches and glory, and he turns this forgotten, broken army into his own personal wrecking crew.
And what he did next was just pure military genius. Instead of taking on the combined Austrian and Sardinian forces at once, he uses incredible speed to get right between them, hitting one and then the other. He knocks Sardinia clean out of the war, chases the Austrians all across northern Italy, and then personally negotiates the peace treaty. Get this, he's only 28 years old, and he has single-handedly won an entire war.
Next up, they send him to Egypt. Now, militarily, this one was, well, let's just say it was a mixed bag. The British Navy shows up and sinks his whole fleet, trapping his army there. But Napoleon understood something crucial, the power of perception. He was a master of spin. He controlled the whole narrative, sending back reports that played up all his victories. So when he eventually ditches his army and sails back to France, he's welcomed not as a failure, but as a conquering hero. Incredible!
Okay, so he's conquered foreign armies. Now Napoleon sets his sights on a much bigger prize, conquering France itself. His ambition is shifting from the battlefield right to the heart of political power. When he gets back to Paris, he finds a government that's weak, corrupt, and deeply unpopular. So, with a few allies, he just decides to overthrow it. He stages a coup. It was messy, it was chaotic, but when the dust finally settled, Napoleon had outplayed everyone. They set up a new government with 3 leaders, or consuls, but he made sure the first consul, that's him, held all the real power.
And what he does with that power is just staggering. He wasn't just a warlord, he was a serious nation builder. He fixes the broken economy with a new national bank, he streamlines the thousands of confusing laws into the famous Napoleonic Code, and he reforms the whole education system to be based on merit. He brought order to a country that had been in total chaos for a decade.
But, and this is a big but, his reforms had some really sharp limits. While he was all about revolutionary equality for men, his new legal code actually rolled back many of the rights women had gained during the revolution. Under his code, husbands had complete legal control over their wives. It's a pretty stark reminder that his vision of liberty definitely wasn't for everyone.
So by 1804, being a dictator for life just wasn't enough. He decides he's going to be an emperor. And his coronation? Wow. It was his boldest political statement yet. The Pope himself travels all the way to Paris to do the ceremony. But at the critical moment, just as the Pope is about to place the crown on his head, Napoleon takes it and crowns himself. The message could not have been clearer. My power comes from me, not from God, not from anyone else.
So now he's Emperor Napoleon, and he's facing a Europe that is united against him. The old monarchies, they see him as this dangerous product of the revolution who threatens their very existence. So they form coalition after coalition to try and take him down.
This right here lays out the basic problem for the whole era. It was like the whale versus the elephant. Britain was completely untouchable at sea thanks to its powerful Royal Navy. But on land, Napoleon's Grande Armée was an unstoppable force. The two superpowers just couldn't get a clean shot at each other.
So what was his secret? What made his army so unbeatable on land? A big part of it was this: the corps system. He broke his massive army down into smaller, self-sufficient mini-armies that had infantry, cavalry, and artillery all baked in. They could march separately and then converge on the battlefield. This gave him a level of speed and flexibility that his old-fashioned enemies just couldn't keep up with.
And here's the perfect example of that system in action. In 1805, an Austrian army is sitting in Germany, waiting for their Russian allies to show up. Napoleon, who is way over on the English Channel, secretly wheels his entire army across Europe at lightning speed. He completely surrounds the Austrians at a town called Ulm and forces them to surrender before the Russians are even close. He famously said, "I have destroyed the Austrian army by simply marching."
So, with the Austrians out of the way, he now has to face the combined armies of Austria and Russia. Knowing their commanders were arrogant and eager for a glorious victory, he played a brilliant mind game. He sent messages that made him sound weak, scared, and desperate for peace, luring them into attacking him on ground that he had chosen himself.
And this leads to what many call his greatest masterpiece, the Battle of Austerlitz. It was a trap. He deliberately weakened one side of his army and abandoned the strategic high ground, tempting the Allies to attack there. And as they did, as they came down from the heights to crush his flank, a massive French force that he had hidden in the morning fog stormed up the now empty high ground, smashed the Allied center, and shattered their entire army. It was absolutely brilliant.
The political shockwaves from Austerlitz were seismic. Austria was forced to make peace, again, and Napoleon completely reorganized Germany, dissolving the Holy Roman Empire, an institution that had existed for 1,000 years. Gone, just like that. He was literally redrawing the map of Europe with his sword.
You'd think Europe might have learned its lesson, but nope. The very next year, Prussia, super competent in its famous military history, foolishly declares war on him all by itself. Napoleon annihilates the Prussian army in a single month. He then turns his attention to Russia, fights them through a brutal winter, and then delivers the final crushing blow at the Battle of Friedland.
And this brings us to the absolute peak of his power. In just over a decade, a boy from an impoverished island, a bullied outsider, had become the most powerful man on the planet, the undisputed master of Europe. His journey was completely unprecedented. So with an entire continent at his feet, what could a man with that kind of limitless ambition possibly do next?